Tonight, I'm sharing 3 stories of the dangerous RV camping life. These are the kinds of stories that make you think twice about parking for the night in the middle of nowhere, trusting the wrong stranger, or believing that just because your doors are locked, you're safe. This happened to me 2 summers ago, during a cross-country road trip I took alone in my old Class C RV. I had spent almost a year saving for that trip. I wanted the whole experience people always talk about online: the freedom, the quiet roads, the random stops in small towns, the nights under the stars. I had this picture in my head of peaceful campsites, coffee in the morning, and total silence at night. The truth was, most of the time, it really was peaceful. Until Wyoming. I had been driving for almost 9 hours that day. The whole afternoon had been hot and dry, with those endless highways where it feels like the road never changes. Not many gas stations, not many cars, and barely any signs of life besides fences and hills in the distance. By the time the sun started dropping, I was exhausted. I had originally planned to stay at a campground about 40 minutes ahead, but when I checked the map, I realized I was running low on gas. Not dangerously low, but low enough that I didn't want to risk driving around in the dark looking for a place. So I pulled into a small gas station off the highway. It was one of those lonely stations with 2 pumps, a small convenience store, and a flickering open sign in the window. There were only 2 other vehicles there. A pickup truck at one pump and an old sedan parked near the side of the building. I filled up, went inside, and bought water, beef jerky, and a flashlight because mine had stopped working the night before. The woman behind the counter looked to be in her 60s. Tired eyes. Cigarette voice. She looked out the window at my RV and asked, "You staying nearby tonight?" I told her I was looking for a campground. She shook her head slowly. "Closest decent one's full this time of year." I asked if there was anywhere else safe to park. She hesitated before saying, "There's a gravel pull-off about 6 miles west on County Road 12. Truckers use it sometimes. Not official, but people stop there." Then she added, "Just don't open your door for anybody." She said it so casually, like it was normal advice. I laughed a little and said, "That common around here?" She didn't smile. "More than it should be." That answer sat in my head the whole way there. The gravel pull-off was easy to miss. Just a break in the road with enough room for maybe 6 vehicles. It was surrounded by dry grass, low brush, and a stretch of flat land that faded into darkness. No lights. No buildings. No houses. Just open land and a weak moon coming through the clouds. There was only one other vehicle parked there when I arrived, a rusty semi-truck with no trailer attached. The cab was dark. No engine noise. No sign of the driver. I parked at the far end of the pull-off, trying to keep distance. My RV was old, but it was solid. Or at least I thought it was. I locked the doors, pulled down the shades, heated up a can of soup, and tried to settle in. I texted my sister my location because I'd made a habit of doing that every night. No signal. I wasn't surprised. A lot of those stretches had no service. So I ate, brushed my teeth in the tiny sink, and got into bed over the cab area. The inside of the RV creaked every time I shifted. The wind had picked up outside, making that low, hollow sound as it moved around the vehicle. At first it was relaxing. Then I heard footsteps. I froze immediately. Not because footsteps near a campsite are strange, but because these weren't from a campsite. This wasn't a campground with people walking dogs or heading to the bathroom. This was a dark roadside pull-off in the middle of nowhere. The footsteps were slow and heavy, crunching on gravel. I held my breath and listened. They stopped. A few seconds passed. Then I heard a soft knock. Not on the door. Under the window beside the small dining table. 3 slow taps. I stayed perfectly still. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. Just listened. Nothing. Then again. Tap. 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 My entire body went cold. The worst part was how low the knocking was. Whoever it was wasn't knocking like a normal person trying to get someone's attention. They were tapping low, almost like they were crouched beside the RV. I slowly reached for my phone. No signal. I kept telling myself maybe it was the wind throwing something against the side. A branch maybe? But there were no trees. And it had a rhythm to it. Deliberate. Human. Then a man's voice spoke from outside. Hey! His voice was calm. Too calm. I just need some help. I didn't answer. Another pause. Then he said, My truck won't start. I immediately thought of the semi-truck I'd seen parked there. Still, I didn't answer. He moved a little closer. I could hear the gravel shifting under his boots. Miss? I know you're in there. That sentence made my stomach drop. Not. I think someone's in there. Not. Hello? He knew. I stayed silent, hoping he'd give up. Instead, he walked toward the front of the RV. I heard him tug once on the passenger door. Locked. Then a second tug, harder. Then silence again. The silence was worse than the knocking. I slowly crawled to the front and peeked through the tiny gap in the curtain by the windshield. At first I didn't see him. Then I noticed movement near the headlights. A man was standing just off to the right side of the RV, half hidden in darkness. He was tall and wearing a dark jacket and a baseball cap. I couldn't see his face clearly, but I could tell he wasn't looking at the door anymore. He was looking up at me. He had known exactly where I'd be peeking from. I dropped back instantly and hit my head on the cabinet behind me. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it. Then he laughed. It wasn't loud. It was this low, almost amused laugh like I'd just confirmed something for him. Then I heard his footsteps move away. For a few seconds I thought maybe it was over. Then came the scratching. It started at the rear of the RV. A slow dragging sound. Like someone running something metal along the side. It moved all the way down the vehicle from back to front in one long, ugly scrape. I flinched so hard I nearly fell off the bed. Again. This time slower. He was dragging something down the side of my RV. A knife. A key. A tool. I didn't know. Then he did it a third time, and halfway through he stopped. Right under my bed. And knocked again. 3 taps. My fear changed right there. Up until then I was scared. But now it became panic. He was playing with me. I grabbed the flashlight and the tire iron I kept near the bed. I had no real plan. I just knew that if he got in, I needed something in my hand. Then I heard a second voice outside. This one came from farther away. Hey! A different man. The first man's footsteps moved fast over gravel. Then the second voice shouted, What the hell are you doing? I rushed to the front curtain again and looked through the gap. The semi-truck driver, or who I assumed was the semi-truck driver, was walking toward my RV with a big flashlight. He was older, heavy-set, and wearing a sleeveless shirt and jeans. His flashlight beam swung across the pull-off, catching the first guy moving away toward the road. The first guy called back. "Just asking for help." The trucker yelled. "Bull." The man kept walking. He didn't run. He just kept walking into the dark until I couldn't see him anymore. The trucker stood there for a minute, then turned his flashlight toward my windshield. I pulled back, not wanting him to think I was staring. A second later, he knocked on the door. I almost didn't answer. But then he said, "Don't open it. Just listen." So I stood there inside, silent. He said, "That guy ain't with me. Been seeing him walking this road before. He bothers people parked out here. Sometimes more than bothers." I didn't say anything. He continued, "You should leave. Right now." I finally spoke. "Is he gone?" "Don't matter," he said. "If he's alone, he'll come back. If he ain't alone, that's worse." That was enough for me. I climbed into the driver's seat, hands shaking so bad I almost dropped the keys. The trucker stepped away from the front and aimed his flashlight toward the road so I could see the edge of the gravel. I started the engine, and the old RV coughed before turning over. As I pulled out, I saw the trucker in the side mirror still standing there with the flashlight. I drove for almost 40 minutes before I found a lit rest area with other vehicles and security cameras. I barely slept. The next morning, in full daylight, I checked the passenger side of the RV. There were 3 long scratches running almost the entire length of it. Deep enough to cut through the paint. Near the middle, under the window by the table, there was something else. A handprint. Not pressed flat like someone steadying themselves. It looked smeared. Like someone had leaned there for a long time. I told myself I'd just been lucky that the trucker was there. That would have been enough to make the story terrifying on its own. But 3 days later, I got to a proper campground in Montana and finally had service again. I called my sister and told her everything. She went quiet for a second and asked, "Did you say County Road 12? I said yes. Then she told me that after I'd sent her my location that night, the text must have gone through later once I found service without me noticing. She had searched the area because she was worried about me being alone out there. And she found a local forum thread. There had been multiple reports over the past few years of people waking up to someone tapping low on their RVs and trailers in that same area. Usually 3 taps. One guy claimed he saw the person crouched under his window. Another said he found footprints circling his camper in the morning. But one post stood out. It was from a woman who said her husband opened the door after hearing someone ask for help with a broken-down vehicle. He disappeared. No evidence. No clear suspect. Nothing. That forum post was 8 years old. I asked my sister if she still had the link. She said the page had been deleted by the time she checked again. And the thing that still bothers me the most is this. When I cleaned the side of the RV a week later, the smeared handprint came off. But inside one of the scratches, lodged deep in the chipped paint, I found a broken piece of fingernail. Not mine. And not something that would have been left there by someone just asking for help. My wife and I rented an RV for our anniversary trip a few years back. We'd been married for 7 years and had never really done anything big for an anniversary. Life got busy. Work, bills, family stuff. So we decided to do something different and take a week driving through Northern California. Nothing too wild, Just forests, lakes, quiet campgrounds, and some time away from everything. My wife, Emily, was more excited than I was. She loved the idea of sleeping in an RV. She kept saying it felt cozy, like bringing your little home with you. By the third day, I finally started to relax into the trip. The campground where this happened was the nicest one we stayed at. It was tucked deep in a redwood area, with tall trees packed so close together that the sunlight barely reached the ground in some places. Even during the day, parts of the campground felt dim and cool. There were around 20 sites total. Ours was Site 11, near the far edge of the loop. Not too isolated, but not crowded either. A few sites nearby had families, one older couple, and some younger guys in tents. Everything seemed normal. When we arrived around late afternoon, the site directly across from us, Site 14, was empty. That changed around sunset. I was outside hooking up the water line when I heard an engine coming slowly through the campground. I looked up and saw a large fifth-wheel RV being pulled by a black pickup truck. It looked older but well kept. Dark-tinted windows, no decals, no state stickers that I noticed. The truck backed the trailer into Site 14 with no problem, almost too smoothly, like they'd done it 1,000 times. A man got out of the truck first. Late 40s maybe. Medium build, short hair, work boots. Then a woman got out of the passenger side. Pale, thin, long brown hair pulled back tight. Then 2 kids climbed out of the back seat, a girl around 12 and a younger boy maybe 8. At first glance, they looked like any camping family. But there was something stiff about them. No talking. No laughing. No one pointing out the trees or stretching after a drive. The father just started setting up. The mother stood by the trailer steps with one hand on the rail, staring toward the woods. The kids stayed close to the truck. Emily came out beside me and smiled at them. Evening. The father turned, gave the smallest nod, and went back to work. The mother didn't respond at all. Emily looked at me and raised an eyebrow, like okay then. We laughed it off and went about our evening. Later, after dinner, we sat by the campfire with drinks and listened to the sounds around us. The crackling wood, distant voices, bugs, wind up in the trees. It should have been relaxing. But I kept glancing at Site 14. Their setup was weird. No fire. No camping chairs. No lantern outside. Just one dim light from inside the trailer. The kids never came out again after dark. The parents barely seemed to speak. At one point, maybe around 9, I saw the little boy standing in the trailer window through a gap in the blinds. Just standing there, staring out. Then a hand, probably the mother's, pulled the blinds shut hard. Emily noticed me looking and said, "Those people are odd." I said, "Yeah." Then we both heard it. A thud from Site 14. Not loud enough to turn heads around the whole campground, but loud enough for us to notice. Then another. It sounded like something heavy hitting a wall from inside the trailer. Emily looked over. "Do you think the kids are roughhousing?" Before I could answer, the father stepped out of the trailer and shut the door behind him fast. He stood on the steps for a second, breathing hard, and scanned the campground. When his eyes landed on us, I looked back at the fire. A minute later he walked over. He stopped just outside our site and said, "Sorry if we're making noise." His tone was polite, but something about it felt forced. I said, "No problem." He nodded once. "Long trip. Kids are tired." Then he turned and went back. Emily waited until he was inside again before whispering, He looks terrified. I laughed quietly because I thought she was being dramatic. But the truth was, she was right. Later that night, after we'd gone inside the RV to sleep, I woke up needing to use the bathroom. Our rental RV had one of those tiny bathrooms where you have to angle your body just to move around. I was trying not to wake Emily, so I kept the lights off and used my phone screen for light. That's when I heard whispering outside. At first I thought it was just other campers walking back from the bathrooms. Then I realized the whispering was right beside our RV. I crouched a little and peeked through the window over the sink. 2 people were standing in our sight. The woman from Site 14 and the little girl. My chest tightened instantly. The woman was facing our RV. The girl stood close beside her, holding something against her chest. I couldn't tell what. The woman whispered, "Please!" Just that one word. I stood there frozen. The girl looked like she'd been crying. I was about to wake Emily when the father appeared out of nowhere from the darkness between the trees. He grabbed the woman by the arm hard enough that she stumbled. Even through the closed window, I heard him hiss, "Get back inside!" The girl flinched. The woman tried to pull away, but not very hard, like she already knew it was useless. He looked around quickly, and for one horrible second I thought he saw me at the window. But then he dragged them both back towards Site 14. I woke Emily immediately and told her what I saw. Her first reaction was, "We need to call someone." But there was almost no service in the campground. I stepped outside with my phone and walked a little way toward the road until I got one weak bar. I called the campground office emergency number listed on the map they'd given us. No answer. I tried again. Voicemail. So I called 911. The call connected, but the signal kept cutting. I got out the campground name and site number before the call dropped. I stayed outside another 10 minutes trying to reconnect, but couldn't. Eventually I went back into the RV. Emily was sitting up in bed, wide awake. We locked everything again, even though it was already locked. Then, from across the road, we heard screaming. A child's scream. Sharp, high, and sudden. Emily was out of bed before I could stop her. I grabbed her arm and said, "No." The scream came again, then stopped abruptly. The campground around us stayed mostly quiet, which I remember finding strange. Maybe other people were sleeping deeply. Maybe the trees swallowed the sound. Or maybe everyone heard it and made the same choice we did, stay inside. We sat there in total silence for what felt like forever. Then came 3 knocks on our RV door. Emily grabbed my arm so hard her nails dug into my skin. A child's voice whispered, "Please let me in." Every instinct in me wanted to open that door. But something felt wrong. I stepped quietly to the side window instead and lifted the blind just a little. No one was on the steps. No one. Then I saw movement low to the ground near the front wheel. The little boy from Site 14 was crouched under our side mirror, staring up at the door. His face was wet with tears. And standing behind him in the dark, just out of the weak campground light, was the father. He had one hand on the boy's shoulder. That was all I needed. I backed away from the window so fast I nearly knocked over the table. Then the father spoke, still in a whisper. "If you open the door, I'll kill you both first." Emily heard that too. Her face went completely white. A few seconds later, footsteps moved away. We didn't sleep at all after that. I held the biggest kitchen knife from the RV rental drawer until sunrise like it was going to do anything. At first light, I looked outside again. Site 14 was empty. Truck, trailer, everything gone. No sign they'd ever been there except flattened dirt and tire tracks. I got dressed and walked straight to the campground office as soon as it opened. The woman working there looked confused when I told her about the family. Then she said something I'll never forget. Site 14's been closed for maintenance for 3 weeks. I thought maybe she meant it was supposed to be closed, but people used it anyway. So I pointed toward the site and said, "They were there last night." She shook her head. "No one should have been there." I insisted. "Describe the truck, the trailer, the kids, all of it." She called the manager. He came out, listened, then drove over with me in a golf cart to check the site. The fire ring was cold. No hookups had been used. No fresh trash. Nothing. I told them to look at the dirt for tire tracks. They were there, but faint. The manager knelt down and frowned. He said, "These aren't from last night." I asked what he meant. He pointed to pine needles and dust settled into the tracks. Older. That didn't make sense. I knew what I'd seen. Emily had seen them too. Then the police showed up, probably from my dropped 911 call. 2 deputies took our statements seriously enough, but you could tell they thought we were overtired or mistaken. Until one of them checked the bathroom building. He came back a few minutes later looking a lot more alert. He asked us to stay put. They taped off the women's bathroom for about an hour. Eventually one of the deputies told us they'd found blood in one of the sinks and on the floor of a stall. Not a huge amount, but enough. That changed everything. The campground was searched. Rangers came. More deputies arrived. They went through the woods around the loop and asked every camper questions. Nothing came of it. No family matching that description was officially found. No missing child report in the area matched. The weirdest part came that afternoon when one deputy returned to us with a photograph on his phone. It was an old case photo from another county about 200 miles away. The man in the photo was the father from Site 14. Same face. Same short hair. Same dead look in his eyes. But the article connected to the photo was from 11 years earlier. The man had been suspected in the disappearance of his wife and 2 children after they vanished during an RV trip. Suspected, but never charged. He disappeared before police could question him again. The deputy asked if I was sure it was him. I said I was. Emily said the same. Then the deputy zoomed in on the case file details and quietly added, "The kids were the same ages then as the ones you described." I didn't understand what he meant at first. Then it hit me. If it was really him, and if that old case photo was 11 years old, then the children we saw should have been adults by now. We left that campground immediately. A week later, back home, Emily and I kept talking about the little girl standing outside our RV with her mother, whispering please. At one point Emily said, "Did you ever see what she was holding?" I hadn't. But Emily had. She said when the woman and girl were standing in our sight, the girl had something clutched to her chest. A stuffed animal. A rabbit with one ear torn off. Emily remembered because it looked old and dirty, like it had been carried around for years. About a month later, Emily found an archived article about the original missing family case. There was a family photo attached. In that photo, the daughter was holding a stuffed rabbit with one ear torn off. And the thing that still keeps me up some nights is that when the police searched the campground bathrooms, one of the things they found in the trash can under paper towels and bloody tissues was a small strip of fabric. Soft, white, and dirty. It was from a stuffed animal. I used to think the scariest part of RV travel was mechanical failure. Blown tires. Dead batteries. Running out of fuel in bad weather. Stuff like that. After what happened to my friend Tyler and me in Nevada, I realized the scariest part is how easy it is to vanish when you're living on the road. This was back in October of 2021. Tyler had bought an old refurbished RV from a retired couple and wanted to take it on a test trip before committing to a longer route. I agreed to go because I had some vacation time and because Tyler was the kind of friend who could make even boring situations fun. He was one of those guys who talked too much, laughed at his own jokes, and somehow got strangers to like him instantly. We planned a 4-day trip through remote stretches of Nevada and Utah. A lot of people warned us about Highway 50, the loneliest road in America. But that was part of the appeal. Empty roads, weird little towns, desert views, and night skies with almost no light pollution. For the first 2 days, it was great. Cold mornings, bright afternoons, little gas stations that looked frozen in time. We took photos at old roadside stops and cooked cheap meals in the RV at night. On the 3rd day, everything changed. We had been driving since early afternoon, and were trying to reach a campground outside Ely before dark. But the RV started having electrical issues. First the radio cut out, then the dashboard lights dimmed, then the backup camera went black for a few seconds and came back. Tyler kept saying it was probably a loose connection. Then, about an hour before sunset, the engine started sputtering. We pulled over on the side of the highway and sat there while the wind rocked the RV gently. The desert around us was huge and empty. Flat land, low hills in the distance, fading sunlight. No houses. No fences nearby. Just road and open ground. Tyler lifted the hood even though neither of us knew enough to really fix anything. He messed around with the battery cables, checked fluids, and pretended he had a plan. After about 20 minutes, the engine started again. We decided not to risk the campground and instead look for the nearest place we could stop for the night. About 15 miles later, we found it. A rundown roadside lot with an old sign that read, "Last stop RV Park. Vacancy. Cash only." The sign was half lit, buzzing faintly in the darkening air. The place looked barely open. There was a small office building, maybe 8 RV spaces, and a long empty stretch of dirt behind it. 2 spaces near the back were occupied. One by a travel trailer, another by a small camper van. A man came out of the office when we pulled up. He was thin, maybe late 60s, with sunken cheeks and a stained jacket. He moved slowly, but his eyes were sharp. He looked at our RV and asked, "One night?" Tyler said, "Yeah." The man nodded and said, "30 cash." Tyler paid him. The man handed over a rusted key attached to a square piece of wood with the number 3 painted on it. Tyler laughed. "What's this for?" The man said. "Bathroom." I asked, "There's only one?" He nodded. "Keep it. Bring it back in the morning." Then he looked past us into the RV and asked, "Just you two?" Something about the way he asked it made me uncomfortable. Tyler said, "Yeah." The old man stared a second longer than normal, then pointed toward the far end. "Space 3. Best signal out there." That turned out to be a lie. We had no signal at all. We parked in Space 3, closest to the back edge of the property. Beyond that was just open desert and a line of low dark hills. It got cold fast after sunset. Desert cold always feels meaner somehow. The wind had teeth in it. Tyler heated Ken's chili while I stepped outside to look around. The office light was still on, but the old man had disappeared inside. The travel trailer and the other occupied site had curtains drawn tight. The camper van had no lights on. The whole place felt dead. When I got back inside, Tyler was staring at his phone. "No service?" I asked. He shook his head. "Nothing." We ate, played cards, and tried to laugh off the vibe of the place. Tyler joked that it looked like the kind of stop where people got murdered in low-budget movies. I remember saying, "Not funny." He grinned. "That means you agree." Around 10, there was a knock on the RV door. Tyler and I both looked at each other. It came again. 2 quick knocks. Tyler went to the side window and peeked through the blind. "Just the owner," he said. He opened the door halfway. The old man stood there holding a flashlight pointed at the ground. He said, "You boys lock up tonight." Tyler smiled. "We plan to." The old man didn't smile back. He said, "If you hear anybody outside, don't answer." That made my stomach tighten. Tyler asked, "Why?" The old man paused, then said, "People walk through sometimes." Before either of us could ask anything else, he turned and shuffled off into the dark. Tyler shut the door and locked it. "Well," he said, "that's comforting." I tried to laugh, but I couldn't. By midnight, the wind had gotten worse. The RV creaked every now and then, and loose gravel skittered across the lot. I was in the small bed at the back, and Tyler had taken the fold-out near the table. I wasn't asleep yet when I heard movement outside. Footsteps. Multiple. Slow and uneven, circling on gravel. I whispered, "Tyler." He answered immediately, meaning he wasn't asleep either. "You hear that?" "Yeah," he whispered back. We stayed silent and listened. The footsteps stopped near the rear of the RV. Then came a voice. A woman's voice. "Help me." It was faint, shaky, desperate. I sat up so fast my back hit the cabinet. The voice came again from outside. "Please! Help me!" Tyler was already off the fold-out and moving toward the front window. I hissed, "Don't." He whispered back, "What if someone's actually hurt?" Then a second voice spoke outside. A man's voice, farther away. "Ma'am? You okay?" Tyler and I looked at each other. That made it sound real. Like another traveler had heard her too. Then the woman screamed. Tyler rushed to the door, and I grabbed his arm. "Stop," he said. "Dude, we can't just sit here." I said, "The old man told us not to answer." Tyler looked angry now, like fear was turning into frustration. "You trust the creepy old man more than someone screaming for help?" Before I could answer, there was pounding on the travel trailer 2 spaces down. Then shouting. Then silence. Total silence. No more woman. No more man. Nothing. Tyler slowly let go of the door handle. We waited. A minute later there was a soft knock on our RV. Then another. A woman whispered right outside the door, "Please let me in. He's coming." I felt every hair on my arm stand up. Because this voice no longer sounded far away. It sounded calm. Too calm. Tyler backed away from the door. The whisper came again, lower this time. "I know there are 2 of you." We both froze. Then whatever was outside moved away. Footsteps crunched slowly past the side of the RV. We heard the same footsteps continue toward the camper van. A few seconds later, someone banged hard on its metal side. Then another bang. Then a man inside the van shouted, "Go away!" Right after that came a horrible sound I still hear in my sleep. Laughter. Not one person. Several. Men and women. Low, ugly laughter moving around the lot in the dark. Tyler finally looked out through the front curtain, just a sliver. He whispered, "Oh my God!" I moved beside him and looked too. There were people in the lot. At least 5. Maybe more. They moved between the RV spaces like shadows. Some walked normally. Some seemed to drift in and out of the dark between the weak lights. One woman wore what looked like a long nightgown. A tall man carried something over his shoulder, maybe a bag, maybe a tool. I couldn't tell. Another person was standing perfectly still near the office, facing our direction. The weirdest part was how quiet they were except when they wanted to be heard. No normal conversation. No obvious reason for being there. Just slow movement and occasional whispers. Tyler said, "We need to call the cops." No signal. Then we drive. That was the smartest thing he said all night. We climbed into the front seats as quietly as possible. Tyler turned the key. Nothing. The engine clicked once and died. He tried again. Nothing. The dashboard flickered weakly. Battery. Either the earlier electrical problem had finally caught up with us, or something had drained it. Tyler muttered, "No, no, no." Then one of the figures outside noticed movement through the windshield. A man started walking toward us. Slowly. Not rushing. Like he knew we had nowhere to go. Then the office light snapped on. The old man came out holding a shotgun. He fired one shot into the air. The sound cracked across the desert so hard it made me jump. Every figure in the lot scattered instantly. Not panicked. Not screaming. Just moving fast and low into the darkness beyond the weak perimeter lights. The old man shouted, "Inside! Now!" Tyler opened the door and yelled back, "The RV won't start!" The old man hurried over faster than I would have thought possible for his age. He climbed inside, smelled like dust and cigarettes, and asked, "They touched the battery?" Tyler said, "What?" The old man shoved past him, stepped down into the RV, and opened a compartment panel near the floor. I had no idea what he was doing, but after a second he held up 2 disconnected cables. He said, "They do this. Quiet. Seen it before." He jammed them back into place, told Tyler to turn the key, and the engine roared alive. Then he pointed the shotgun toward the lot and said, "Drive. Don't stop till Ely." Tyler didn't need to be told twice. We pulled out so fast the RV bounced over the exit curb. In the headlights, just before we hit the highway, I saw 2 people standing at the edge of the property watching us leave. A man and a woman. Neither moved. Both smiling. We drove in silence for almost 20 minutes before Tyler finally said, "What the hell was that?" I didn't answer because I didn't know. When we got to Ely, we found an all-night gas station and called the police. They took the location seriously enough to send someone out, but I could tell from their tone they'd probably heard strange stories before. The next afternoon, after getting almost no sleep, we went to the station in person to follow up. That's when things got worse. The officer we spoke to looked through some notes, and said units had gone out to the location we described. There was no RV park there. I actually laughed because I thought he was messing with us. He wasn't. He said there was an abandoned lot, an old office building, and the remains of utility hookups, but the place had been shut down for years. No owner on site, he added. No registered business. I told him that was impossible. We paid a man. We stayed there. He fixed our battery cables. The officer asked if we still had the bathroom key. Tyler and I looked at each other. He dug through his jacket pocket and pulled it out. The square wooden tag with the number 3 was still attached. The officer took it, stared for a moment, then excused himself. When he came back, his whole attitude had changed. He asked us to describe the old man in detail. We did. He pulled a thin file from a cabinet and opened it to an old black and white photo. Same man. Same sharp eyes. Same sunken cheeks. But the photo was dated 1989. I remember Tyler saying, "That's him." The officer said the man had owned the RV park decades earlier. He'd reportedly stayed behind after it shut down, refusing to leave the property. Then one winter he was found dead in the office from a heart attack. Alone. I said, "That's not possible." We talked to him. The officer didn't argue. He just looked tired, like he had no interest in saying out loud what he might have been thinking. Then he told us something else. Over the years, travelers had reported strange encounters near that abandoned lot. Voices outside vehicles. People asking for help. Figures walking the property at night. In a few cases, vehicles had been found abandoned nearby with dead batteries or disconnected lines. One case involved a couple in a camper van who disappeared in 2017. The vehicle was found locked, undamaged, and empty. I immediately thought of the camper van parked near us that night. I asked if they ever found the people. He said no. Tyler asked about the travel trailer. The officer flipped through more notes and frowned. He said, "No other vehicle was reported there last night." That hit both of us hard. We knew there had been a travel trailer. We heard banging on it. We heard someone inside the camper van. We had not imagined that. Then Tyler suddenly remembered something. He said, "The old man said he'd seen them before?" The officer asked. "Who?" Tyler answered. "The people outside." The officer was quiet for a few seconds. Then he said, "There are old stories from out there." He didn't sound like a man trying to scare us. He sounded like a man repeating something he wished didn't exist. "Back when the RV park was still open," he said, "drifters and transients used to come through. Some were dangerous. Some were said to lure travelers out of their vehicles. The owner would chase them off. After he died, the stories didn't stop." Tyler and I left that station with more questions than answers. We drove straight back home the next day and never finished the trip. For months afterward, I tried to make sense of it logically. Maybe the officer got the details wrong. Maybe the place wasn't officially open, but someone was living there. Maybe local stories got twisted over time. I held on to those explanations until about 6 months later. That's when Tyler called me late one night. He sounded shaken. He said he'd been cleaning out the RV before selling it and found something wedged behind the panel where the battery cables had been disconnected. I asked what it was. He sent me a photo. It was a folded piece of yellow paper, old and brittle. On the front, in faded writing, were the words, "If they come to your door, do not let them inside. They are not lost." On the back was a list of dates. 7 dates, spanning nearly 20 years. Beside each date was a number. 2, 1, 3, 2. I didn't know what the numbers meant until Tyler zoomed in on the last line. The final date was from 3 weeks before our trip. Beside it, written shakily, was the number 2. And under that, in darker, fresher ink, were 2 words that definitely had not faded with time. You escaped. Which story scared you the most? Comment below and subscribe for more true horror stories. If you want to share your story with us, send us at belladarktales@gmail.com.